Well, greetings to you. It's a delight to welcome you into this family of Doxodeo and to welcome you as a partner. For Liana, my wife, and myself, we've had the privilege of being part of this ministry now for many, many years. Started in 1992, where we took leadership of what is now called the Brooklyn campus in Pretoria, South Africa. And we knew that God needed to help us because we took a church that had gone through massive crisis. But in a very short space of time, we saw the miraculous happen. And the church started growing, multiple services, literally thousands of people coming to church. And one day, as I was reflecting on this just blessing that we were experiencing, preparing for a leadership meeting that evening, I pulled the Bible closer, cracked it open. It fell open to 1 Corinthians chapter 12, and I read about the gifts of the Spirit. One particular phrase stood out. To some are given a gift of faith. Well, as I read that, I recognized that God was speaking to me, and I was just sensing His presence in my study. And it was as if God was reminding me that, 2 years prior, in 1992, this was now 1994, many people did not believe that the church would rise up and become an influence again within the context of the community. But I believed it. And as I was reflecting on that, I literally heard the Holy Spirit say, that was not your faith. It was a gift of faith. For the first time in my life, I became aware that I had been functioning under the empowerment of the Holy Spirit, empowering me to believe beyond my natural capacity to believe. I was sitting there, tears were streaming down my cheeks, and I was just reflecting on the goodness of God when God deposited something in my heart in such a way that it has changed my life and changed the trajectory of our ministry. I literally heard God say to me, I now give you faith to trust me for a city. I don't know how to explain it, except to say that in that moment, I became impregnated with a conviction that a geographical space the size of a city can come under the dominant influence of the Lordship of Jesus Christ. Well, that evening, we had a leadership meeting, and armed with just two statements, faith for a church and faith for a city, I arrived at that meeting, and by the grace of God, God just moved upon the leaders that had gathered that evening. And after a time of worship, one of the leaders stood up and said, he has a word from God, and his communication was translated from Afrikaans, was the following: God says, I'm giving you the city. Now that arrested my heart immediately, because I knew that we had never spoken city, we'd spoken church, restoring church, building church, focusing on the church. But in that moment, we recognized that God was confirming what I had experienced in this leadership meeting, that He was changing our focus to the city. We had no reference as to what that would mean. We kind of felt that we had kind of figured out the church thing, but what does it mean when you engage a city? And because we recognized that we did not have any strategic insight into this, instead of just rushing out and doing stuff in the city, we said every time we come together as a leadership, in the next season, we're going to ask God for understanding, for wisdom and strategy. Understanding to better understand, what does this mean, and how does God think about our community and our city and our engagement as His people within that context. Then for wisdom to know what the next steps would be and how do we lead people with us in this journey. And then thirdly, a strategy. Now, that took us about 2 years. And when in 1996 we felt that we might now be ready with some kind of an understanding of a strategy, we launched Doxa Deo. And it was based on this conviction of this promise that was given in Habakkuk 2 verse 14, that the knowledge of the glory of the Lord will fill the earth as the waters cover the sea. Now, our name captures that concept, the glory of God. And in essence, our name is the bringing together of two languages, Greek, doxa, glory, Deo is Latin, God, the glory of God, because we also recognize that God will use us to bring different peoples together. And in our logo, you will see there is a wave. Now, that's not because we go to some idyllic places in the world, and some of them are, but it's because of the wave of this glory of God cascading over cities where we are engaged. Now, obviously, God gave us a strategy. And of the strategy, we will share more as time goes on. Because not only did we recognize that God blessed us for the city of Pretoria, later in the story of the feeding of the 5,000, we saw 12 baskets and we recognized it's time for export, and we were taking what God had blessed us with to other places all over the world. And now we see that God is opening doors not only for Doxa Deo, but through Doxa Deo, through what we call the City Changers movement, to serve in more than 31 nations in the world, helping other leaders to discover what it means when the church becomes the agency of grace to affect their world. We want to welcome you as a partner in a dream. And our commitment to you is that we will invest in your life to raise you up as an agent of grace, as a city changer. Together, we truly can see the glory of God come to our world. God bless you. Great to have you part of this family. And may you experience it as a time of incredible growth, development, and empowerment. God bless. Grace to you.